Hi, I'm Gordon from Camera Labs, and this is the Sigma 28-70mm f2.8 DGDN, a general purpose zoom lens for full frame mirrorless cameras. At the time I made this review, it was only available in Sony E and Leica L mounts, but let's hope Sigma starts making RF and Z mount versions of its DGDN lenses sooner rather than later. Announced in February 2021 at a price of $899 or £759, the Sigma 28-70 provides a more affordable option for those who want to walk around zoom with an f2.8 aperture but can't stretch to pricier, not to mention heavier models that zoom that bit wider to 24mm. Sigma loaned me a final production sample in the Sony E mount, and in this video I'll show you how it performs for landscapes, portraits, close-ups and general use. To give it a real workout, I tested it on the 50MP Sony A1, and as always I provided full resolution sample images via my review of the lens at cameralabs.com. I'll also be updating that page in the future with side-by-side comparisons against alternative models, as I only had a limited time to test the lens for this first review. Okay, for starters, here's the optical range in practice, starting at 28mm for standard wide-angle views, before zooming into 70mm for short telephoto coverage. By starting at 28 rather than 24mm, Sigma's been able to reduce the cost and weight. The 28-70 2.8 DGDN measures 72 by 102mm and weighs 470 grams. Compare that to the 24-70 2.8 DGDN Art, launched just over a year earlier, which is noticeably larger, 88 by 123mm, and getting on for double the weight at 835 grams. The new 28-70 also uses smaller 67mm filter threads versus 82mm on the 24-70 Art, although it's only weather sealed at the mount versus the whole lens for the Art model. Price-wise, the 24-70 2.8 DGDN Art costs $1,099 or £1,049, making it around $200 or £300 more expensive than the 28-70 contemporary version. Both models are significantly cheaper than Sony's own FE 24-70 2.8 G Master, which at the time I made this video sells for around $2,000 or pounds and weighs 886 grams. Starting a little less wide to save weight and money isn't a new idea. Tamron's first native E-mount lens was the 28-75 2.8 Di3 RXD. That's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Launched around 3 years earlier and currently costing $879 or £699. Measuring 73 by 118mm and weighing 540 grams, it's a little longer and a tad heavier than the Sigma 28-70, but it's roughly in the same ballpark in terms of size, weight and price. Now, I've fully reviewed the Tamron 28-75 as well as the Sigma and Sony 24-70s at cameralabs.com, and again I'm going to update my review of the new Sigma with direct comparisons as soon as I can. Both the Sigma and Tamron 2.8 zooms are designed not only as lighter and more affordable alternatives to 24-70 2.8 models, but also as step-ups from budget kit zooms like Sony's own FE 28-70 f3.5 to 5.6. Now that costs roughly half their price, but it suffers from a dimmer and variable aperture that's 2 whole stops slower at the long end. Okay, let's see what the new Sigma is all about. From the side, the Sigma 28-70 is pretty straightforward. A short angular throw on the zoom ring gets you from wide to the long end with the barrel extending by 23mm. There's only one switch which toggles between manual or autofocus, while at the end is a smooth manual assisted focusing ring. There's no optical stabilization here, so anti-shake has to be provided by your camera body. Sigma supplies a thick plastic petal lens hood that can be fitted backwards over the barrel for transportation, while an equally robust spring-loaded cap clips onto the 67mm filter thread. At the lens mount you'll find a rubber grommet providing some dust and moisture resistance, but unlike the 24-70 2.8 Art version, this doesn't extend to the rest of the lens barrel, so use with caution in bad weather. Now this is the same approach as Sigma's recent DGDN contemporary prime lenses, not to mention Tamron's 28-75. Okay, now for focusing on the Sony A1 using single AFS mode at 70mm 2.8, and you can see there's a minor contrast based wobble at each focus pull to confirm, but the process is still fairly swift and it's quiet too. Switching the A1 to continuous AFC mode though forces the body to use phase detect autofocus alone, which here is refocusing notably faster than before, and in my test didn't actually reduce the accuracy, so it can be worth experimenting to find the best mode for your particular subject. Here's the lens again at 70mm 2.8 with continuous autofocus and wide area working fine with the A1's eye detection, tracking me effortlessly around the frame. Notice the almost complete absence of focus breathing here, which I'll talk about more in just a moment. Now 70mm 2.8 isn't particularly demanding for sports or wildlife, but I tried it out nonetheless on the A1 with Brighton seagulls, and in these sequences you can see the lens successfully tracking the eyes of the birds as they swoop past at very close range. Do keep an eye on your chips and your donuts. Focusing is also effective during video, here again with the close range focus pull and fixed central AF area. The focus pulling here is accurate and mostly smooth with only minor wobbles here and there. And here recording video with the wide area and eye detection enabled, where you can see the body and lens here at 70mm 2.8 easily keeping me in focus as I move back and forth and around the frame. At 70mm 2.8, subjects are also nicely separated from the background without the total obliteration of longer or faster lenses, so it makes a nice option for filming pieces to camera from a tripod. Handheld vloggers will, however, probably find the 28mm widest coverage a bit too tight. I handheld this with the A1 using standard steady shot IBIS and with my arms stretched out as far as they could go, and while there's again nice separation from the background at f2.8, I'm just too large on the frame. If you're into handheld vlogging, I find 24mm looks much better, but ideally I'd want to go even wider still for this kind of thing. In my final focus test, I wanted to check for focus breathing, where the magnification can actually vary as you focus from near to far. Here's the lens at 28mm focusing between infinity and the closest focusing distance, and then back again, and while there's a minor change in magnification, it's fairly well behaved. Set the lens to 70mm though, and as you focus from the furthest to the closest distance and back again, the lens is impressively bereft of breathing altogether, with the magnification essentially remaining unchanged throughout. This is great news for videographers. Now for a short range portrait test, here with the Sigma 2870 at 70mm 2.8, where as you've seen before it's possible to achieve a nice subject separation without completely destroying the background or context. The rendering of blurred areas here also looks nice and smooth. It's certainly a big step up from shooting a similar portrait with the Sony FE 2870 3.5 to 5.6. If you prefer more in focus though, here's how the lens looks closed one stop to f4, and even when viewing the full image I'd say the rendering in the background has now become noticeably busier and less attractive as a result. What do you think? Let's take a closer look with the f2.8 shot on the left and the f4 version on the right, where it's clear the f4 version looks much crisper on my eyes. Now I think my lens and body combination are fractionally misfocusing at f2.8 when using eye detection, and repeating the test didn't improve the result. In contrast, at f4 the details around my eyes become much crisper, although I personally now find the rendering in the background busier and less attractive. Now, to be fair, the f2.8 version looks absolutely fine when viewed in isolation, and don't forget I'm also showing you results using an unforgivingly high resolution sensor. But in my portrait test, the lens did lack the absolute subject crispness of higher end lenses when shot wide open. So if you want absolutely pin sharp details on a portrait when the aperture is wide open, I'd say you're going to be better off getting yourself a portrait prime lens instead, around the 85mm focal length, and Sigma has got a perfect example for you with its 85mm 1.4 DGDN. Rendering of blurred areas is always something I like to test and compare, so here's the 2870 2.8 at 70mm and working through its aperture range. I shot this from the closest focusing distance at this particular focal length, quoted as 38cm. Toggling between the images shot at f2.8, f4 and 5.6, you'll see how the bokeh blobs become rounder at smaller apertures, albeit with some visible impact of the 9-blade diaphragm system creeping in as the aperture closes. In terms of the quality of the rendering, there's minimal outlining, but clear evidence of onion ring patterns within the blobs. Now, it's not ideal, but to be fair, a similar amount of onion ringing is also visible on the Tamron 2875 and even on the more expensive Sigma and Sony 24-70 2.8 models. If you prefer smoother bokeh blobs in this kind of situation, you'll again be better served by a prime lens than any of these zooms. For one more bokeh comparison, here's the Sigma 2870 again at 70mm 2.8 before zooming wide to 28mm 2.8 from the same distance. The Sigma lens can however focus much closer when zoomed to 28mm, a distance quoted as 19cm, and here it is focused as close as possible. There's still some texture within those blobs, but it's still a fairly attractive result, and I enjoyed the potential for shallow depth of field effects when shooting at very close range. Do note however that the lens does become softer in the corners the closer you focus. As for actual macro reproduction, here's a ruler shot from as close as the lens would focus when zoomed to 70mm and at f2.8, notice how the details towards the edges have become quite soft. Closing the aperture gradually improves the edge performance, but even at f8 it's still soft at the extremes. So stop down if you're archiving flat subjects, but if the main subject's only in the middle of the frame, you can get away with those larger apertures. Zoomed wide to 28mm, you can get surprisingly close to the subject and still enjoy a sharp centre, but the quality greatly deteriorates as you move towards the edges, especially at large apertures. Closing the aperture gradually improves the sharpness away from the centre, but there's still a lot of distortion here, so it's best reserved for subjects that are kept in the middle. Now for the quality at landscape distances, starting with the lens at 28mm f2.8, and like all my shots in this review, it was taken with the Sony A1 using the default lens corrections, so that's shading and chromatic aberration compensation set to auto and distortion set to off. Taking a close look in the middle reveals plenty of fine details even with the aperture wide open, and closing the aperture here makes little difference to the quality. As you move into the corners, the sharpness remains fairly consistent at this distance, with softening only really appearing in the very extremes. The biggest issue though is vignetting or darkening in the corners, even with shading compensation turned on. Closing the aperture one stop to f4 greatly alleviates vignetting, while closing another stop or two also boosts the sharpness in the far corners. Next, here's the view at 50mm, roughly midway through the range and with the aperture wide open to f2.8. Taking a close look in the middle again reveals nice fine details, even coupled with the high-res A1 body, and closing the aperture isn't necessary to boost the detail. Moving into the corners shows the lens is roughly maintaining a good degree of detail, although with the aperture wide open, there's a little softness in the extreme corner again, plus some darkening due to vignetting. As before though, closing the aperture gradually improves the quality, brightening the corners and boosting the detail. If you're a pixel peeper with a high resolution body, it's definitely worth shooting detailed views at f5.6 or f8 rather than wide open if you can. And finally, here's the view at the long end of the range at 70mm and again open to f2.8. Looking closer in the middle again shows decent detail, which again looks pretty good out of the gate at f2.8. Moving into the corner again shows some softness and darkening at the extremes, which as before gradually improves as you close the aperture. Again, things are looking pretty good across the frame at f5.6 and f8. Okay, now it's time for my final verdict, and as I wrap up this review I'll show you a slideshow of images that I took with the lens mounted on a Sony A1 body, and as always the original high resolution files are available to view and download via my review of the lens at cameralabs.com. The Sigma 28-70 2.8 DGDN Contemporary provides the allure of a bright, fixed aperture zoom at a more affordable price and lighter weight than traditional 24-70 2.8 models. Believe it or not, that extra 4mm at the wide end really does make those zooms more expensive and much heavier. Compared to Sigma's own 24-70 2.8 DGDN Art, the new 28-70 Contemporary version sacrifices those 4mm at the wide end to save roughly 20% in price and lose almost half the weight. Now of course there's other differences, including better overall weather sealing on the Art model, but ultimately you have to ask yourself, how much do you really need or want that wider coverage, and crucially, do you need it in your general purpose zoom? Personally speaking, I do enjoy having 24mm coverage, but also appreciate having a cheaper and lighter lens. If I'm being honest though, what I really want is even wider coverage than 24mm, so if you're like me, you may be better off getting your broad coverage fix with an ultra-wide zoom like Tamron's 17-28 2.8, which of course is a perfect complement to general purpose zooms that start at 28mm. Alternatively, L-mount owners could consider the unusually wide range of the Panasonic 20-60mm, albeit with its dimmer f3.5 to 5.6 aperture. If you are satisfied by the 28-70 range in a general purpose lens though, the Sigma DGDN is sharp in the middle and only softens in the extreme corners with the aperture wide open, where you'll also notice some darkening due to vignetting. Closing the aperture to f4 improves vignetting and sharpness, and by f5.6 to f8 the image becomes consistently bright and sharp across the frame, at least at longer distances. The closer you focus, the softer it's going to get towards those extremes. If you're shooting closer subjects like portraits, the background rendering can be attractively smooth at f2.8, although I found it hard to nail precise focus on my eyeball using eye detection on the A1 body, unless closing the aperture to f4, at which point the background bokeh became busier. Bokeh ball fans will also notice onion ringing, but that's also generally visible on similar zoom ranges I've tested, even on the much pricier Sony 24-70 2.8 G Master. Meanwhile, the build quality is fine, although it's only dust and moisture sealed at the mount end and not throughout like the more expensive Art version. Ultimately, the Sigma 2870 2.8 DGDN Contemporary does what it sets out to do by delivering a useful general purpose range with the benefit of a fast and constant f2.8 aperture that separates subjects from backgrounds with a pleasing blur. It does all this without breaking the bank or your back, but then so does the Tamron 2875 2.8, so do compare them closely, and I'll be doing just that in a future update of my review of this lens at cameralabs.com, where you'll also find reviews of most other general purpose zooms. In the meantime, if you're happy with wide coverage that starts at 28mm, the new Sigma provides a compelling alternative to bigger, heavier and more expensive zooms while maintaining decent results. Right, that's it for this review. Sorry the time frame didn't allow me to make any direct comparisons, but this was as much as I could do given the shorter deadline and loan period. So tell me, would you be happy to give up 24mm coverage in return for a cheaper and lighter lens? Or perhaps even 24 isn't wide enough for you and you prefer to go broader still with an ultra-wide zoom instead? Let me know, and as always there's links in the description and pinned comment to check the latest prices, find my sample images, and if you're feeling extra generous, treat me to a coffee or yourself to my in-camera photography book. Oh, and if you're not already subscribed, please do give me a follow to help my channel grow and to ensure you don't miss out on any of my reviews or tutorials. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.